Have you ever tried to record something with the Osmo Pocket 3 only to feel like you're fighting the gimbal to get the shot you want? I found this particularly true when filming things up close and around myself. Even though DJI suggests that the follow gimbal mode works well for most scenarios, including vlogs, it can feel awkward in some very common situations, like when you're trying to capture your next meal or when you're out shopping. Fortunately, the May 2024 firmware update introduced the FPV perpendicular gimbal mode, and in this video I'll show you how this rarely talked about mode can make filming up-close shots much more intuitive. So let's talk about why filming things up close can be awkward in the first place. The main issue with using the standard follow mode is that whenever you turn on your Osmo Pocket 3, the gimbal orients itself with the camera pointing straight ahead. Now, I don't know about you, but I usually turn on my Osmo Pocket 3 at around a 45-degree angle because it's what feels most natural to me. When I'm shooting something in the distance, this angle works perfectly fine. In fact, it's more comfortable than holding the camera fully upright. However, if I want to get a high angle shot like filming my lunch or items on my desk, I now have to make a very exaggerated movement with my arm and wrist to get the camera pointing downwards. This simply isn't practical, and if you're like me, you've probably gotten used to using the Osmo Pocket 3's joystick to aim the camera downwards. While this method works, using the joystick can be finicky. Furthermore, every time you restart the camera or reset the gimbal by double pressing the joystick, the camera goes back to facing straight ahead, forcing you to make the downward adjustment all over again. The FPV perpendicular mode provides a great solution to this problem. It makes recording with the Osmo Pocket 3 as intuitive as using a phone or mirrorless camera. Just point at your subject and it will be in the frame. To activate this mode, swipe down from the screen, press the gimbal mode setting, and scroll to the very last gimbal mode. In FPV perpendicular, the camera always remains at a right angle to the Osmo Pocket 3's screen, which is what makes it so intuitive to use. Restarting or recentering the gimbal will always bring it back to this perpendicular position. Here's a quick comparison that shows the difference in effort required to switch between various objects on my desk using the follow mode with the camera held at a 45-degree angle versus the FPV perpendicular mode. It might seem like the only advantage of the new FPV mode is that it saves you time by eliminating the need for joystick adjustments when you want to film things below you. However, there's another potential benefit of the FPV perpendicular mode compared to the follow mode. In follow mode, the gimbal locks the roll axis, keeping the camera level at all times. While this is generally helpful, it can feel counterintuitive when you're filming things below you because horizon leveling isn't very relevant at these steeper angles. This is why cameras like the iPhone disable the horizon guide when you're taking top-down or overhead shots. So back to the Osmo Pocket 3. Here I'm trying to switch from filming my laptop screen to the sticky notes on my desk. Notice how in follow mode I have to make an exaggerated downward movement with my arm to get the camera to point directly at the sticky notes on the desk. In contrast, FPV perpendicular mode doesn't lock the roll axis. So when I make the same movement, the camera behaves more naturally, requiring less arm movement and allowing me to lock onto subjects with greater accuracy and precision. For complete top-down shots, the locked roll axis in follow mode can become a real hindrance, as the gimbal will counteract any left or right rotation that is typically quite desirable in this situation. Now you might say this is just the learning curve to using a gimbal camera and that you just have to get used to making the correct movements. And I agree with this sentiment to some extent, but overall I find this new FPV mode to be more reliable when you want to get the shot right on the first try. Plus, if you ever hand your Osmo Pocket 3 to a friend or family member, they'll likely have a much easier time using it in this mode. Now that I've talked about why you might want to use the new FPV mode over the follow mode, what about the standard FPV mode that has always been on the Osmo Pocket 3? Well, the normal FPV mode is just the follow gimbal mode with the roll axis unlocked. This means that upon startup or recentering the gimbal, it still defaults to pointing the camera straight ahead. And this means it suffers from the same problem as the follow mode when trying to shoot things beneath you. While the new FPV perpendicular mode is therefore the best option for getting your Osmo Pocket 3 to behave like a phone when recording, the standard FPV mode is still useful for certain creative shots or more immersive shots, although for me personally, it's the gimbal mode I use the least. I hope you enjoyed the video. Let me know what you think about the FPV perpendicular mode and whether or not you've been using it since the firmware update.